We can try again now to speak to political analyst TK Pooe, who's joining us from Johannesburg, I believe. A very good evening to you, sir. If you're able to hear me now, I was trying to ask you earlier about how high your hopes are that whatever the president announces tonight will take the country on a different, more prosperous course.
Well, thanks for having me. Out of 10, I'd say 1, and 1 being, look, if we're looking for something fundamental, here we're speaking about changing the course of unemployment, getting institutions to become stronger. You can't do that in less than a year, despite who you put there. These are things which should have started 5 years ago. So my reason for 1 is, look, you must always hold out hope. We can't be hopeless as a country. But I think it's one of those things where I think we've kind of made a bigger thing of this reshuffle than we ought to have been because things have been so bad.
And is that a crisis created? I mean, I use the word crisis loosely. The level of expectation, anxiety, frustration with an announcement that we were told in January was forthcoming, but January came and went, February came and went, and now in March we're finally getting it. Do you think if the president had sort of just made the announcement anyway at the beginning of the year, we would have just got A, the ball rolling on the many issues that need to be addressed, and B, there wouldn't be all of this toing and froing, all the speculation and possibly unmet expectations?
No, you actually had it right by saying, 1, we are in crisis as a country, and I know, we cover so many things in South Africa that we've sort of become used to living in a state of crisis, so you're correct in that assessment. Would it have really changed anything had he announced it earlier? I think, like you're saying, it would have killed a lot of the manufactured, the manufactured outcry which we're seeing about, look, are we having a reshuffle or not? And for me, again, it just maybe, if you had to kind of encapsulate it, is a state of South Africa where we're so fed up or hurtful of, we all know what's wrong, but we're so looking for the fundamental things that, any little cosmetic thing which is out there, which looks like a bit of hope, we get excited about. Because to the president's defense, he really didn't give us a proper time scale. He just said, look, there'll be changes, but we also have to understand, reading what I think we now can term Ramaphosa, or the state of Ramaphosa, when he says he's going to make change, it could really mean anything. It could mean next year, 2 years from now. So we can give him a bit of slack, but I think it's because things are so bad, people are looking to say, listen, you've won in December. Try to give us some inclination that you kind of understand that you're going to do things differently, and I guess we've got our answer.
How much is riding on this for him as the president and for the ANC when you consider that 2024 will be an election year?
I think from let's say from an optics and a media perspective, this is quite big for him. If there's one thing we know about a president is he is what I term a media-friendly president. Well, he doesn't speak to the media much, but he tends to try and use it to say, listen, things are being done. In the reality, like I said, if you understand how policy works, none of what's going to come today really is going to change people's life drastically. Because for you to actually get policy to work, it starts about 4 or 5 years ago. You don't just do it in less than a year. But for the optics of saying, listen, I'm the guy who won in December. I told you that I might have not have brought you the vision of, a new dawn, but I'm going to do things differently. He does need to look like he's speaking to that. This is especially true for the business community in South Africa, who have sort of started to catch up with the rest of South Africans to ask the critical question that, does he really know what he's doing? So this is a way of him actually saying, listen, guys, I'm fully in control. I might be slow. I might be labored in making decisions, but I am going to make decisions eventually. So it's not for you and I as much as for maybe the media. And you said maybe they're speaking to the bigger ANC voters to say, guys, I can't turn this ship around.
And you say he's been a media-friendly, I suppose, in terms of coverage. Some have argued he's had more favorable coverage than his predecessor, for example. But the paint has sort of worn off, has it not? The glitter has worn off on the Ramaphosa and all the optimism of 2017. And even post the 2022 ANC conference, there wasn't as much hope, at least among the general public, that this is a president who can indeed lead this country to better times. Where did it go wrong for him?
Look, I've always said this from the first day he stepped in. I didn't have expectation, and people were like, well, you shouldn't be so negative. I was speaking to, I think, your colleague, Mr. Colin Gambia. I was one of the first to say, look, I don't understand why people are so excited. Because, look, change, and I think maybe we missed the point that change doesn't happen when you become president. You don't come with a track result when you become president. It's something which we were supposed to have seen from, when he was deputy president. We sometimes seem to forget that he was in charge of the ESCOM war room. Hence, we can ask the question, but look, you more than most have actually been the Minister of Electricity, and it hasn't worked out quite well. So I think where it really went wrong was that our expectations as a nation and his abilities never really matched. And people always used to compare him to what happened previously. It's almost as though saying that people and South Africans are very guilty of this, and I also include myself in it, where, you know what, this guy is better than what previously was. It's better than that guy, and we all know who that guy was. And that's a wrong way to analyze policy in countries. It's not about that guy, it's about what are you bringing to the table. And I think from that, from that time onward, the veneer was going to slip because, let's be very honest, I don't think he was really qualified for this job. He means well. I can never say he doesn't mean well. But in terms of saying, listen, what type of president did we need post-President Jacob Zuma? What we needed was someone who was going to say, listen, I'm only going to be concentrating on three things: the economy, power, and making sure local governments work. Everything else I would love for you to do for you guys as a country, but this is how I'm going to govern. And also take the risk of saying, I'm willing to be a one-term president, meaning I'm willing to wreck all those, what people term captured people, captured institutions, and say, listen, I'm going to be a one-term president. And I don't think he was brave enough to do it. So this was always going to be the eventual course of correction where President Ramaphosa is in charge.
How much of that, South Africa's obsession to a degree with finding a messiah at any given time? I mean, you look at how whenever there's a dissenting voice in the ANC, that person, people start to say things such as, oh, this should be our next president, right? The constant pursuit by the general public and the ANC itself of a messiah during times of crisis. To what extent has that, in fact, worsened the political crisis, the political paralysis in this country?
I'm going to answer it in this way, and I want people to hear this is not what I'm saying. Because sometimes it's better to start like this. What I'm not saying is we should not have someone like President Nelson Mandela. I think having a president like President Nelson Mandela as a first term and then going to President Mbeki almost spoiled people's expectation of what a leader is in South Africa. Because President Nelson Mandela, I always tell my students, he was someone, in a way, the good Lord cannot give you so many gifts in one human being. It's impossible. For you to be able to play to all galleries, to be able to come across as a genuine individual, and to also know when to leave. It's unheard of in politics for one human being to possess all those skills in one individual. And I think this idea of the Messiah always comes from the fact that people want to go back to 1994 when we had an exceptional human being as a president, and they also had an exceptional human being who followed him. So that's always the problem with South Africa, that we look for a Mandela /Mbeki to follow us. In truth, look, the real world, when you have to build a country, you actually meet people who are not really great. These are people who have their faults as human beings, and maybe they're great at one thing. And I think South Africans don't simply want to accept that, listen, to actually build a country means we're going to have to go through losses. We're going to have to experiment. We're going to have to say, look, we're wrong in many things, the Constitution, how we approach things. And maybe we're not as great as we thought we were, and that this is going to be a project for the next 20 or 30 years. And instead of us wanting somebody who is exceptional, we should get somebody who just simply steadies the ship for a few years. And then if we're gifted with this individual who's able to do, be a great administrator, be ethical, be able to actually get us all on board the same page, it will be termed a great thing. But I think South Africans don't want that. We want quick fixes. Hence we have 200 or so parties on ballots, because every South African believes that they can be the Messiah. And instead of telling people the honest truth that it is hard to build a country, it is painful to build a country, and that sometimes we need to go through 10 or 15 years of boredom for us to actually be a normal country. And
TK, while I'm speaking to you, in fact, we just had a statement come in from the presidency now saying that the cabinet reshuffle announcement has been pushed out by an hour. We'll only hear from President Ramaphosa at 8 p.m. tonight. How much time does one president need to make up his mind?
Well, with this president, I think he needs all the hours in a day. I believe, I know things have changed in the world. I still believe we have 24 hours in a day, so don't be surprised if it goes to 8:30. And that could simply be that he told, look, this is the guys I'm going with, and maybe his inner circle, maybe just dithering. And I think that's also something which we need to probably do more media investigation with, which is, who are his inner circle? Because sometimes I think they really are just taking him the wrong way. One of the things he should have done post-NASREC last year was to say, listen, guys, you as political advisors have taken me thus far. It has not worked. Let me try and look for new voices. And he doesn't seem to do that. And I think who knows, now it might go to 9 o'clock because he's still relying on the same voices.
All right, TK Pooe, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight on News at Prime as we continue to wait for the President to tell us how he will reconfigure his cabinet. By the way, as we were just saying, if we were expecting that announcement to happen at 8 o'clock tonight, it's been pushed out. Well, we were expecting it to happen at 7. It's been pushed out now to 8 p.m. But Zianda Ngobo is still outside the union buildings for us, so we'll continue to get a sense of what's been going on there and speak to various political voices in the country to get a sense of the significance of the moment, the expectations, and what is realistically possible.